Yo, yo, yo. Hey guys, welcome back to another awesome edition of the Best Practices Show. Have you ever failed in anything? Have you ever screwed anything up? Do you experience failure on any level? I hope you do, because if you don't, you're not trying hard enough. Well, the question becomes, what do we do when we fail? Today, we give you an answer. We give you three answers, 3 ways to turn failure into success, with an amazing coach of ours, Heather Crockett. If you use this framework, it'll help you succeed over and over again. So please listen up. I hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll see you soon. Hey guys, welcome back to the Best Practices Show. We love bringing it. So I hope you guys are enjoying this as much as we are. And today, we're going to give you some insight on something you always have to deal with. It's called failure. Have you ever failed at anything? I fail a lot. I've actually failed more than I've ever succeeded. And if you can use it correctly, whether it be with a team member, whether it be with a family member, whether it be in practice, whether it be with a decision, you can actually turn it around into success. And I have an amazing coach on today. Her name is Heather Crockett, and we're going to be talking about 3 ways to turn failure into success. Heather, thank you so much for being on. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, Kirk. Thanks for having me back again.
Oh my gosh, again and again and again. What you guys don't know, if you don't know this already, we're a practice coaching company. I'm surrounded by some incredible coaches, and you're going to meet one of them today if you haven't met her already. And we're going to talk about why this is so important in a dental practice. So basically what we do is we coach dentists and team members in practices that aren't necessarily broken. And we help them navigate through these challenges. And Heather, I want you to start here. Why is this subject so important?
This is so important, talking about failure, because we all fail at one point or another, multiple times. I fail multiple times every single day. We're human. It's inevitable that we fail. So often we can be ashamed of the mistakes that we make, and then we don't want to admit them. We're afraid that people will think less of us. We're afraid that we won't be able to truly accomplish what it is that we set out to accomplish because we failed. And oftentimes that ends up becoming this piece of, we don't even start because we're afraid of failing in the first place. And that fear that we're paralyzed by doesn't get us anywhere. We realize that failure is where the learning is. So that piece of it is what we're going to jump into today, Kirk. That's why this is so important, because we all fail. So how can we take that failure and use it to our advantage?
Yeah, because a couple things. If you don't fail regularly, you're not trying hard enough. And if you do anything worthwhile in life, like, let's just start with the basics, like going to school, like dating, thank God I had so many relationships fail when I was dating, so that when I found the right one, I was like, I can't screw this up. Think about that.
I hope Sarah listens to this one.
Oh my gosh. She would totally agree. She's like, okay, so when, never mind. I don't want to speak for Sarah. So, but also too in business, like the first couple times you try anything in business, if you're a dentist, the first couple cases you ever try, here's what's so cool. Within the failure are the solutions to never do it again, because it is okay to fail, but to do the same thing over and over again is kind of silly. So we have a 3-step process in this. So give us the first way to turn failure into success, Heather.
Okay, so the first way is we just have to recognize it and call it out.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, we're all human, right? Sometimes it's a tendency to just, oh, I'll shove it under the rug. Maybe nobody will notice that I did something wrong. If we recognize it and call it out, then we have a starting point. We talk about stages of change in our work all the time, and awareness is the first step, but we can't be aware of it unless we call it out. Hey, I made a mistake. Whoops, we did that wrong. This feels like a failure, right? We have to start there first. Part of that means we have to foster this culture of vulnerability-based trust. So I have to be able to feel safe. I need to have an environment where I feel safe enough that I can call out that I did something or that we did something together that didn't quite work out the way that we had hoped it would.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're presenting the biggest hurdle for most people. And it is so powerful when you can be in the presence of anybody who says, wow, I really screwed that up. And because really, I mean, there are some people, and you all know them if you're listening to this, they just won't even call it out. They're like, okay, who screwed this up? I didn't screw this up. It wasn't me, or they just don't call that out. And what it does is it creates a bigger problem. You really start to not trust the person that you're in relationship with. I think being vulnerable and saying, hey, listen, I'm a human being helps us with the first step, don't you think?
Yes, 100%. And we have to be able to exemplify that to our team members. So if you're a practice owner listening, you have to go first. When the leader goes first, it makes it easier for everybody else to go first. And they're not going to lose confidence and respect in you. They will gain more respect for you if you call it out and say, ooh, looks like this didn't go as planned.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's okay.
That's
Don't
okay.
Yes. Don't get caught up in the blame game. Don't get caught up in getting defensive or even finding fault with somebody else. We talk a lot of, and Christina shared this with me early on when I was here with ACT, is that we're attacking the system, the process, the agreement, not the person. We're attacking the goal, the system, and we're not attacking the person themselves, right? Usually, it's a collective goal. It's a collective movement. It's a collective thing that we're working on together. It's not normally, sometimes very few. Normally, it's not just one person who totally screwed it up.
Yeah. And I'll just tell you some simple lessons along that. I mean, a lot of times when bad things happen, you just got to take a deep breath and go, And what Heather's really talking about, if you want to get scientific about it, is I'm going to take this activity that's in the emotional part of my brain and I'm going to slowly move it to the thinking part of my brain. Because over time, if you lead anybody, a family, a business, a dental practice, you're with other people, you can't be that person that just tears somebody else apart when something goes bad. Ultimately, when something goes bad, it's truly almost your fault. Now, I don't want to just go there and just say, oh, it's always your fault. No, there's something that happened that either we weren't clear enough, I don't have the right person, or I don't have the right system. And so, how do we rectify this? And just take a deep breath and, just process through it, don't you think?
Absolutely. And I love what you said there, Kirk, is the communication piece. We talk about U minus R equals C. That comes up on almost every podcast that we have together. Expectation minus reality equals conflict. And I've gone through this at church recently where I'm frustrated with someone and I have shared with the leadership team that's around me that we cannot be frustrated because we've made the assumptions that they believe the same thing we do about this system and process. We have not yet set that expectation clearly enough. So like you said, I take a deep breath and say, okay, where do we need to start? I'm so glad that we've failed, if you will, in this, because now we know that we do need to set that expectation more clear. And that's okay. The other part of this is that you have to celebrate and say, cool, we made a mistake. Now, the next step, how can we learn from our failure? How can we learn from this mistake or this misstep?
Yeah. So I just can't say enough about the first step here is just got to recognize when failure happens, call it out, take a deep breath, see how we can blame the system, not the person. And now we have to start to solve it. So what is the second step in dealing
So
with
number
failure?
2, we're going to IDS the failure. We've talked about IDS before on podcasts. We are going to identify, discuss, and solve. Oftentimes, we will fail at something and not really truly identify what caused us to fail. So we have to peel back the layers first. That's the identify piece. Then we need to discuss it. And the discussion piece, I like the 3 questions. We've talked about this at ACT before. Adriana Booth gave us the first couple. First one, we have to ask ourselves, do we have a system or process in place for this? If we do, awesome. Second question, is that system serving us? If it is, amazing. Now we move on to the third question, which is, are we all following that system? And what I found as a coach, that's normally where the problem lies. Then we have to hold each other accountable to that. But we have to identify it first, and that's part of the identify process.
Yeah, and I love those 3 questions because a lot of times, if you listen to podcasts, you wrote systems 10 years ago, but they're in a manual somewhere up at the front and they've got dust all over them. So is it updated? Is it serving us? No. And you said it once a long time ago. So you do have to go through this process. Do we have a system for it? Is it serving us? And then is everyone following the system? Now, I want to go back to one thing, the IDS thing. And just to give you some perspective, because this is one of the most important things I've ever learned in business, ever, ever, ever. And it came straight from the book Traction by Gino Wickman. So shout out to Gino for creating this. It's so powerful when you have issues in a business. They're challenges, they're problems, they're failures. And so we follow it to a T here at ACT Dental is identify, discuss, and solve. One of the most important things is to identify which issues to tackle first. That was big for me because I thought everything was important. What I didn't realize is that not everything is equally important. There are some big issues. So I'll give you a little hint. So, I mean, even yesterday during our meeting, it's like, what are the top 3 issues? And we call them out in order. What happens is when you solve the biggest issue, you often automatically solve smaller issues. And you can feel so proud when you take a big problem, you identify it, you discuss it, and you solve it right there. And so doing this, when you have a failure, it's life changing. So don't listen to this podcast and go, oh, this sounds like everything else. No, it doesn't. It is powerful when you can do that. And what happens next after that, Heather?
So you identify the discuss piece. Now we can learn from that failure and say, here's what we've identified, that we don't have a system in place, so we need a system. Or we did have a system, it's not serving us anymore. Now we need to change it. What does that look like? Or, hey, we have this great system, but we're not following it. Now we can discuss our countermeasures. What can we put in place so that we don't fail at this again? And I really want to make sure that we put an emphasis on celebrating that we know now how not to do something.
Right.
Because now when I do it again in the future, I'm not going to do it that way because I know it didn't work. So that is something to celebrate. Then you can solve the problem. If it's something that you can solve, which majority of the time it is, you're going to create a system, change the system or modify that system. You're going to have a new process or agreement in place, and then learn from what we did in the past. Like I said before, don't repeat what you did before. Now, I was just with a team last week and we were talking about their ground rules. So everything that they've agreed to do or not do in their morning huddles, their weekly team meetings, and their quarterly planning sessions. We give a few at Act 6, and then we have these teams add more to it for their unique team and practice situation. And this team, over the last 18 months, they have changed and modified it. Was it ever updated in their Google document and on their printed system in their binder? No. So I put up as a quiz, I said, here's the 6 that ACT recommended that you took on. What are the extra ones? And guess how many people got it right?
Oh my gosh. Very low, 0.
0. So did we fail at truly implementing our ground rules? Sure. But then we went through and asked these questions. Do we have a system? Yes. Was the system serving us? Not necessarily, because we didn't update it the way that we should have. And was everybody following it? No, because we didn't update it the way that we should have. So just by going through that IDS, we discovered a failure, if you will, that we were able to overcome.
Yeah. And so what Heather's talking about is so powerful. Now, this doesn't have to be cataclysmic failure. It can be just micro failures. Like, for instance, one of the things that we do with dental practices all the time is their collections percentages are just low. And it's because they have poor systems in place. And so you're frustrated as a dentist because you don't have any money. And you're like, did she pay? No, she didn't pay. She walked out. She owes us $4,500. Now, that will make you insane. You won't stop thinking about it. It's going to make you angry if you don't resolve this conflict. And what you have to do is say, okay, that wasn't good. How do we fix this so that we don't continuously have this problem? We see it in scheduling. We see it with morning huddles. We see it in even the most simple processes. So when you're experiencing failure or lack of expectation or failure in expectations in any way, you can use this methodology just to make things better. One more thing I'll put on here because I love this, Heather. One of the most important things about life is that solving problems gives it meaning. You're always going to have challenges. And part of what gives life meaning is you're like, okay, this is a problem. Let's fix it. Or let's strategize about how this never happens again. So following a routine or a structural or a framework like this can make you feel so much better about the purpose around your work.
Yes, I agree. We have to welcome it. We have to welcome the failure and say, cool, mess that up, got that behind us. Now what
Yeah,
can we do to learn from that?
absolutely. So take
Yeah,
us through
love
the
it.
third step in
Okay, the
dealing with failure.
third, we're going to encourage experimentation. And what,
Ooh,
like, what does that mean? We're going to be okay with failure, right? We're going to be okay. We're going to call it out. We're going to recognize it. And then we're going to say, hey, we're going to start something. I was on a call with a team this morning. It has been an entire quarter. They were supposed to start doing and implement a morning huddle. They haven't done it yet. So on the call, I challenged them, why have you not started this morning huddle yet? What is the fear in your way that is keeping you from starting this morning huddle? Well, it's not perfect yet. We don't want to feel like corporate and talk just about money. Okay, we could talk about those things, but I would say not starting it, you have already failed.
yeah.
You've already set yourself up for failure because you haven't even jumped into encouraging experimentation. And Kirk, we talked about this too as an ACT team. Is anything ever going to be perfect? No. We're going to start with a 1.0 version of a new system, a new tool, a new resource. We're just going to start. We're going to start it at 1.0.
Yeah.
Then we're going to learn and take it to 2.0.
Totally, totally. There's a term in the business marketplace called MVP. It's minimum viable product. And it really works for great companies just getting the basic piece of it, whether it be a restaurant, whether it be a dental practice, you just got to get started. And so you're pointing to something that's really important. I've learned the hard way is that you can't be perfect. Actually, perfection is dangerous. It's dangerous in any profession, especially dentistry. You don't even want to strive for perfection. So progress is really what you want. So by
Yes.
experimenting and making progress, you learn from that. You also fail from that. And then you can actually start to use it to create more progress. And you'll feel so good just knowing, hey, we got started. Our coaches around here use a little term called GETMO. What does GETMO mean, Heather?
Good enough to move on.
Good enough to move on. Let's get going. So you got to try. Sometimes you just got to get going. You got to give it a try.
Yes. And we have to overcome this fear because nobody wants to fail.
Right.
And that mindset has to shift. I want to fail because that's how I learn the quickest. I make mistakes and I'll share a quick story. So in my early dentistry days as a dental assistant, I thought I had a really good system in place. Now we never really had any coaching in this practice. So, fly by the seat of your pants kind of a thing. And as an assistant, I was the solo assistant in this one doctor practice, super small practice. And all of the crowns that came back from the lab went into a particular cupboard. I still remember right above the sink. And we had this gentleman come in. I still remember his name, but for our purposes, we'll call him Joe. Joe comes in. He's a great patient. Kirk, you remind me of him. Just awesome, fun to talk to. Great, great guy, high energy. And he comes in. I am flailing, searching everywhere I can. I cannot find Joe's crown. I cannot find it. And you're laughing because you know that this happens.
Yeah,
I can't find
I'm
Joe's
not
crown
laughing
anywhere.
at you. I'm laughing with you
Right?
because yeah, okay.
I'm sweating, like literally dripping sweat, searching the entire office, cannot find his crown anywhere. So to swallow my pride, we sat down, shared the bad news with Joe, went ahead and took his temporary off. re-impressed, and then sent him on his way and scheduled another appointment for his crown seat in another week and a half. Guess what happened? I found his crown the next day in enough time to catch the lab from starting his new crown. But oh my gosh, Joe would not let me hear the end of it because we had a really good laugh, called him up. We laughed about it. I was mortified. But do you think I ever lost another crown as a dental assistant?
No, I think you probably revamped your systems, double checked everything, right?
Yes. So from that failure, I can now look back at it and laugh from my 20-year-old mistake. But there was so much value in that failure because I knew exactly what not to do the next time. And I never made that same mistake again.
Yeah. And so this is so critical. You experience more than a couple different types of failures. One is a process failure, like what we're talking about. Another one's a relationship failure. And those are the ones that hurt the most. And so you can use this methodology when things go bad. You can say, wow, I really screwed that up and I don't want to experience this kind of pain anymore, and diagnosing it. Now, if you have trouble doing this, because there are people that have blind spots, myself included, and that's why I've got a great team of people around me, whether it be a leadership team. I mean, Barrett does this for me all the time. He'll go like, listen, whatever you said this morning, don't do that. And so I think you have to have good feedback. And that's a lot of what you do with, coaching clients, is just helping them understand where they are in this process of failure. And that's a huge blind spot, right?
Yes, absolutely. And it's my job to help them to overcome that and to kind of change how they look at things so that they enter into this encouraging experimentation.
Yeah. And when you can be humble and everyone else sees you are humble around the process, they'll take bigger risks, which lead to bigger progress, which leads to more fun. And it'll ultimately lead to more trust too in the future. So
Yes.
I love this. So give us some final thoughts on this, Heather. This is a big topic and an important one that everybody's got to overcome.
Well, easier said than done. You have to change your mindset around failure. You have to enter the danger, right? We talk about that sometimes in coaching with my kids too. I'm like, you have to enter the danger. I've never swam before. Well, you have to dip your toe in at some point. You have to change your mindset when it comes to failure. Okay. So don't hesitate and don't hold back because you're not ready or it's not perfect or you're afraid to fail. Be excited to fail because making those mistakes, that's where the lessons come through. And then plan to fail often so that you learn often. And go first. Show the team that, hey, it's okay to fail. And as soon as you get there, like you said, Kirk, you're going to see bigger progress.
Yeah. I think by having good perspective on this and a thought process. Now, remember, you're surrounded by people your whole entire career. There's nothing better than creating a great team of people around you, and you will fail if you try to do anything excellent in life. So, Heather, I can't thank you enough for this. And if you feel like you're just experiencing a lot more failure than you want to deal with, that's okay too. And that might be an opportunity. Just raise your hand, say, I need some help. I do it all the time. I'm like, I don't want to even try to figure this out. This is not good. And we're here. We're a team of coaches. We actually have a full-time therapist on our team. Her name is Gina. She's amazing. And if you're just like, I don't even know where to start with this, don't stay there. You can clearly work yourself out of that, and you can reach out to Gina, and we'll put all that information down in the show notes. So come join us, hang out, even if it's for the Two to the Top Study Club, or if you just have a question, feel free to reach out to us. We're so happy to help you. Heather, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much. We are looking forward to hearing from you when you contact Gina.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, stick around while I say goodbye to everybody else, but thank you guys for listening to the Best Practices Show. Hey, failure's part of being successful. And if you listen to anybody that's ever succeeded, they failed a lot. But what did they learn in the failure? And we're hoping today we gave you a great framework so that you can take failure and make it successful. So hope you guys enjoyed today. If you did, do us a favor, just share with your friends and colleagues. We're going to keep lining up some great stuff ahead. So until we see you guys next time, or you hear from us next time, keep watching or keep listening to the Best Practices Show. You guys enjoy your day.